blurry and even vanishing line between what it means to be a kid and what it means to be an adult, and whether you should be treating kids like adults or like kids. She is Judy Robertson. She teaches at Heriot-Watt University here in the UK. Her background began in computer science and artificial intelligence, but then she got into game design, and in particular, role-playing games that kids could play that would be games that they could take some ownership of and help build. Her most recent interests include human-computer interaction, such as the Nike iPod, where as you run, your iPod is told by the Nike how you're doing and exhorts you to run faster and ups the tempo of the song kind of thing. And has been playing a lot with the Wii. I know in the Innovation Lab, there's a Wii there that some people have, the custodian in the white coat at the lab said, yeah, a lot of the executives here, they come in and they say, oh, I couldn't, and then they play for 1 minute, and then 20 minutes later, you see them still whacking the tennis ball back and forth on it. And she's been looking into new uses for Wii, including being able to use that device, the completely detached pointer, to actually open windows and do tasks that are thought of as kind of not just for kids in interacting with the machine. So please join me in welcoming Judy Robertson. So Judy, you most recently been working on something called Adventure Author. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Adventure Author is a research project that I'm currently working on. And the idea of it is to enable children to make their own computer games. So it's children as producers of technology rather than consumers of technology, which is a theme that a few of us have touched on here today.
Yeah. So I'm curious, do you have a reaction, say, to Bebo where they say, we let you do this skinning, which doesn't mean to take something off, but to choose your look? How central does that seem to you to be to kids in a space?
Yeah. It seems very useful for children to be able to express themselves online, and both Josh and our Bebo colleagues mentioned that. But I think there's a difference between choosing and creating. So if you're simply selecting between skins, then that isn't so much creating something, and you could argue it's expressing your individuality, but it's not creating your own ideas from scratch. And similarly with Josh's examples, I really like Threadless because people are making their own art and sharing it with other people. But if it's just a question of buying things in Threadless, then they're simply choosing to buy something rather than making it for themselves. So I'm interested in learners constructing their own artifacts for other people to share.
And I guess it actually raises an even larger question, because I had always thought teenagers were associated so much with the idea of conformity. They don't want to conform with the generation up, they want to rebel against that, but it's so important not to be seen as an outlier from your peer group. But so much of the message I feel like we've heard echoed from each of the people today has been about this individuality, design your own thing, pick your own skin. Is that a new quality that you're seeing then, this individuality rather than conformity?
I don't think so, unfortunately. I think that one of my concerns about some of the points that Josh raised earlier was that peer pressure is a really difficult thing for teenagers to deal with. And personally, I would prefer to see less pressure on individuals. So the dating game, the game about when you can get somebody to improve you, sounds frankly frightening to me. And if I had teenage daughters, then that's the last thing I would want them to be doing. So that's my perspective on that, but I'm probably a bit too old to appreciate it.
Reactions? Boy, you rolled pretty fast there. You say it's all about flirting, and if you have these games, all the better.
I mean, that site could be used for a lot of different things. It could be used for who wants to meet for a cup of coffee next week, or who wants to.
But you don't believe a minute of that.
No, I don't.
Right.
But sort of the point of showing that site earlier was to share that technology and sort of digital youth are enabled with sites like that to actually put a level of a glass wall between those.
But here's what I hear Judy saying. I hear her saying that kids are now so typically and easily on a platform with a megaphone that is very erratic. Sometimes it's David Weinberger's wonderful quote, in the future everybody will be famous for 15 people. Yeah, that's the kind of long tail. Someone will read my blog. And then at some point, boom, it takes off like crazy, and your blog becomes gateway to an amazing business. And there's some MySpace page, especially if somebody enters a contest, that can go off the charts. But Judy, I sense you saying maybe that's a lot of pressure for a kid to have audiences of millions, or does the fact that they're all strangers mean That's fine, actually.
I think it's important for children to have an audience, and one of the problems in classrooms is that their typical audience is the teacher. The teacher is the person who marks all the work, and they're the person whose opinion matters most. And that's not necessarily a good situation to be in if your teacher doesn't like you. So having a genuine audience of friends, people who care about what you're producing if you're writing a blog, people who read it and give you constructive criticism is really great. But sometimes I wonder if people have, say, more than a couple of hundred friends, is that a stretch of the word friend? Are they really friends? Are they really going to give you some kind of constructive criticism which you can improve your work with?
So this actually calls to mind, just to put another thing on the table, I've gathered a few examples of kids' video vlogs, where they're speaking in the first person to their own webcam, and they want to say something to the world, and they do it regularly. And I gather Bebo provides an umbrella under which that can happen, as do a lot of the other spaces. So I just thought we might, to hear their voices a bit, let's see if I can get this going here. If you can put this up on the podium. The first gentleman is a boy who had his blog on YouTube, his vlog, featured. It became the featured video of the day, and you'll see him react. There's several people here. One of them is not real. And I'll be interested to see what people guess to be who's not the real person.
I was featured by YouTube. I got like a 700 subscribers overnight. I went to bed and I wake up and I'm like, okay, did my blog explode?
I don't like it when people do this in their videos. Hi, it's me, Spurget24. Okay.
Hello, my name is Arthur. I'm the real Spice Boy.
I am ready for school. It was the most embarrassing day of my life.
God, I felt so worthless, and it's all coming back.
And see, I just come on here, I express my emotions, and I make friends, and I get people to subscribe to me. So I'm like a YouTube celebrity now.
So how typical is this of the Bebo population of vloggers? Is this a good spread of videos?
I'm guessing
Well, I want you to guess.
I'm guessing it's the Spider-Man guy.
You think Superman?
Superman, even, yeah.
Got to get your branding straight here.
Sorry.
Yeah. You think the Superman guy's got to be a fake? How many think
Yeah.
Superman was the fake? All right. The other choices were Katie, the girl on the couch who just whined for a second. Yeah, a few say that. And who else did we have? We had the Spice Boy, yeah. How many think the Spice Boy was not real? Wow, everybody believed Spice Boy. You can't fake that. Is that everybody? There was also... Oh, the 29-year-old girl, right, wagging her finger. How many think she is the fake one? Ah. Let's turn to our expert. Who was it?
The girl crying, yeah?
The girl crying on the couch.
Yeah.
Judy, you're also our expert?
I voted for the blonde girl.
So it was the girl crying on the couch. That was the one that's part of a ongoing video soap opera that started off as ambiguous as to whether it was real or fake, and then was later revealed to be the product of a guy named Zach who hired her as the actress. But Zach himself was an amateur and decided this would be a fun thing to do. And I guess we have an experience of that in the Bebo space. Is that right? Tell us about that.
So the Lonely Girl 15 is the well-known case of something that started off and everyone thought it was real and ended up being fake. So we're doing Lonely Girl London, which we're also known as Cape Modern on Bebo.
And are people familiar with Lonely Girl 15? Yeah, some are, some aren't. This is a phenomenon. I don't know if you guys want to explain it.
Yes.
It started on YouTube in the US, and it was a girl blogging about her life, about her parents, and then the more she blogged, it ended up she was involved in some sort of order, some sort of cult order, and it became less and less believable and more sort of fantasy-like. And then it finally got leaked, I'm not sure how, that it was actually a professionally produced production, and she was an actress, and there were 2 professional producers who were creating it.
And there was
So
some,
the fascinating aspect of this is the soap opera specifically for the web. It's filmed in 2-3-minute chunks, and it's an ongoing series, and they're still creating new series of Lonely Girl 15.
And now there's a new series in conjunction with
Yes.
Bebo called
So
Kate
this is
Modern.
called Kate Modern, so it's an indication to the fact that it's London-based. And the difference is we're upfront at this time. It's not for real. We're not doing the whole, is it real? No, it's not. But again, it's professionally produced. And the difference between this and traditional media, traditional television, is that the community can influence the outcome of the story. So each episode is literally filmed one day and aired the next, and then the community feeds back in. They ask for the community to upload videos. The community help them solve puzzles about the order, and that will actually influence the direction of the production.
So it becomes interactive viewing.
And it's pretty clear that nobody thinks, it's not like Orson Welles' War of the World, nobody thinks it's real.
Well, what happened with Lonely Girl 15 was when it came out and it was discovered that it wasn't real, the popularity actually went up. Now, originally you may think, well, that's the flurry of publicity around this fake being discovered, but even after that flurry of publicity for the next couple of weeks, it actually continued to rise. And now I think it has typically 1 million viewers of each episode on the web.
Gotcha. Josh, you have you offer the authenticity meter a lot. Does this kind of stuff worry you, or this is fine because it's declared?
I mean, personally, I like very much dislike sort of Jack in the Box style stuff like that. I think it ended up okay with Lonely Girl, and I would much prefer to see solutions like they came up with, where it's clean slate from the start and interactive. And
Yes.
I think if they're trying to build a brand, they're actually going to build a stronger bond between their viewers and their consumers from the start. From here, where there's still many weary people with Lonely Girl, I would guess.
Yeah. And yet, is it the same phenomenon in your zone, that there are certain people who achieve sudden fame and then they're either revealed as people who were creating fictions in order to do it, or they just happen to be wildly popular?
Well, I guess it's a little different, but yeah, you have those phenomena where people sort of, pretend, but mostly to get sort of just traffic going to the website.
Yeah.
In particular, I mean, I guess the famous Chinese blogging example is that there were a couple of Chinese web bloggers, women, who were suddenly very popular. And but then, basically they were just popular because they were just doing weird acts, and maybe partial nudity and whatever. But then, it was sort of literally 15-minute fame, and then they started creating stories to become popular, such as they were no longer on the front page of Bokeh or something like that, and then they started saying, we got censored, right? And then when they said that, suddenly all the Western media is like, China censored, let's do something. And so the whole press started looking at who was censored, but of course it wasn't censored. But, so you get people trying to use that to try to continue to get their sort of virtual ranking up there.
Yeah. So Judy, under what circumstances do you think a 15-year-old should start blogging, video blogging? I mean,
When they have something that they want to share, when they have something valuable to say. And I think that second point is important, that it's all very well to share everyday trivia that's happening. But as educators, I think that we can help young people say stuff which is worth hearing, and we can help them express themselves more clearly. You went to journalism school, you learnt about writing that way, you practiced writing. But I think it's important that in schools, children are given some help with expressing themselves. And I don't think that we're doing that at the moment, because teachers don't understand new media, and they're not teaching people how to use them effectively or indeed responsibly.
at least in the United States, I gather, there's been some movement. In fact, legislation stirring in Congress that no one thinks has a chance of passage, but legislation that would actually ban sites like MySpace and Bebo from the schools, and a lot of teachers who I think second the emotion, at least. They may not want to see it passed, but where are you on that scale?
I disagree with it, and unfortunately in the UK quite a lot of local authorities ban access to various internet sites, which I think is ridiculous because there's so many great educational resources out there, Bebo and MySpace and things like that included, which children don't get exposure to within school, and teachers aren't able to kind of engage with the children's popular culture. They don't understand there's a big gap between the children and the teachers who are teaching them, and I think that has to change.
So how different, if you were czar, would the curriculum in a typical school for, I don't know, 12, 13, 14-year-old kids be?
I'm not sure the curriculum itself would be that different. I think I would, if I was ruling, I'd structure it differently so that there's a lot more projects which were cross-curricular instead of going to your maths lesson, then your English lesson. That there'd be more projects which were integrated, and the way people would be taught would be different. So instead of the teacher being the expert and standing up and lecturing, the teacher would be seen as facilitator and would be helping the learners to help themselves and to help each other. If you think about the way... Sorry, do you want to say something?
Oh, no, sorry. Go, finish first.
If you think about the way you learn now, you've learned to run your own businesses, you've learned how to be very successful people. You didn't learn that in school through somebody standing up and lecturing at you. You learnt through exploration and you learnt from talking to your peers. And that's the kind of classroom that I would like to see. Whether it's based around technology or whether it's not, I think that the communication is a very important aspect.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, so my comment to that, though, is, I mean, that sounds to me like it's utopia, though. Because you have a friend of mine just recently went to Hong Kong and was going to sort of teach new media, right? And she found that the professors, that, none of them had even blogged, right? And that was her journalism faculty. And so she had to first educate them right from the start. But that generation of journalists that are being educated were going through a faculty of, 50-year-old, 60-year-old professors in some cases who have no idea. And maybe you can teach them how to blog, but really to make it a lifestyle for them, to make them really understand what this new media direction is supposed to be, is going to be very, very difficult. So likewise, teachers are already complaining, at least where I'm from, about, we have too much responsibility. We have too much things to do, and now we have to do this, and now we have to do that. So, and just to follow on another point, we got hammered a little while ago on COPPA, just because the
COPPA is the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act.
Yeah.
And it basically says that if you are
under
13,
yeah.
Your parents' permission is needed before basically any information can be collected from you by a website.
Correct. And of course, we were a prime target, even though we hadn't yet launched in the US, because there were children signing up at possibly under the age of 13, but they couldn't really know. They just wanted to make sure we had this protection in place. But what it meant to say was, what it exposed was that kids, they made the assumption that kids under the age of 13 were innocent and could be influenced and had no idea about the web.
So,
but just to finish that off, I'm like, they may have been true 10 years ago, I don't know. But I look at kids today and I'm having like...
There should be something people over 50 aren't allowed to sign on without their kids' permission.
Perhaps. But I'm having, really difficult debates with 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds who definitely are way ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
And so why should they be deprived of this when they have the intellectual capacity to deal with it? So.
Great point. Michael and Sochi, how many users of Bebo are under 13?
Knowingly none.
Knowingly none. That was a coached answer, right? Knowingly none. Tell us more.
It's the American law is, the COPPA Act is that you do have to be over 13. And I think this is based on research in the US that the maturity of a child is not sufficient to know how to conduct themselves online
until they're bar mitzvah.
The age of 13,
right.
Yeah. So, we have to go with the trend of research, and that's what we do.
So when I sign up for a Bebo account, I'm ready to sign up, it asks me my birthday.
Correct.
What year? And if I put in my real birthday and I'm 12, what does it tell me?
It'll say that you can't register, and it won't allow that computer to register going forward.
So then I go to my friend's computer, and I change my birthday to be a little bit older.
Well, unfortunately, there's no online in online world. There's no real validation of who someone really is. So it's impossible for us to protect against people who wish to deceive us.
So you're saying at the moment we have this kind of fig leaf protection, this pretext that everybody knows is false, where I guess kids, it's often, I guess on YouTube or on MySpace, you'll see kids as 99 years old very frequently.
Right.
And I guess it's because they always just start at the beginning and they say, yeah, I was born in 1906, which is the far back as you can go.
Yeah.
I feel bad for the 102-year-old who's like, what do I do? But, and then we just indulge this fiction, maybe because we think it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, there's more that we do. We do scan for certain text, so people may give away indications by saying which grade of school they're in, or they may actually say in text that they're a certain
And then what
age.
happens next?
So we search for them and then we cancel their memberships.
You say, hi, I'm in 3rd grade, and then you go back to your Bebo page that you've just so carefully picked your skin and you uploaded your video and it's all gone. Thank you for playing. Does it say, we've iced it and in 3 years we'll unlock it and you can just pick up where you left off? Extraordinary.
Yeah.
Is there a special customer service template to write back to the kids who have their accounts canceled?
We do have
Yes.
special templates, yeah.
He says, sucka. Are there questions on this aspect of things? Interventions. Who has a kid or is worried about kids or wants to speak to this? Tell us who you are. Oh, you've got the mic.
Seba Net-a-Porter. I can tell you for sure there's one under 13-year-old who's on Bebo, so just in case you were worried. We know that young people...
You're just going to leave it at that.
No, I'm going to go
I
on,
see,
but I
okay.
just wanted to correct a fact. There is at least one person under, and I know who she is. We know that young people can be very cruel to each other and that peer-to-peer digital bullying is alive and well. What do we feel about whether anybody has a responsibility to deal with that, or is this just another fact of digital life?
Great question. Reactions. Who wants to take it? Sochi?
I'm happy to take it. Well, unfortunately, children have bullied each other since the beginning of time, and now they are doing it online. We do have a customer care team in Austin, and they do try to address these issues, but it's very difficult on our side to authenticate, to really understand and know what's going on. So we do try to remove any offensive material as soon as we see it, just because it's not the type of activity we want to encourage, but we do know it goes on, and I think that's where we have to start talking about educating our children about bullying and how hurtful it is. And just because you can't see the person face to face that you're bullying, you're obviously damaging that person emotionally.
How often do you think people sign on with pseudonyms enough that should they really run into a kind of, for a kid, a PR disaster, Superman and school kind of thing, they can basically migrate to a fresh account with a new, declare reputation bankruptcy and start again?
Yes, you can do that. It is quite easy to do that.
Uh-huh. Other thoughts on this point? Yeah.
On the topic of online gaming then, this has become a big issue in our area because of the maturity of the market. And if you haven't heard about it, particularly South Korea and China and even Hong Kong has had cases of kids basically committing suicide over the loss of their digital assets. And because that was their identity, that was important. Often also you have cases of children sort of playing or too long and then basically have overexhaustion. So that's a darker side of that type of environment. So from our point of view, some of the countries have started creating laws. For instance, Thailand has said you can't play online games from a certain hour to a certain hour. China has recently introduced something where they have said that they are forcing the game operators that the longer you play, the more penalizing it becomes. So essentially, I can play the first 2-3 hours just fine. I can create sort of the same amount of assets. But on the 4th hour, I can only create 50%, so I have to work twice as hard. On the 5th hour, no. And eventually, if I keep playing, I'll start losing assets.
Which from the corporate perspective is a disaster because what you really want is stickiness. You'd love to have people in all the time,
It
right?
is, however, there's a flip side to it. And the flip side is you don't want people to start talking about how this kid or this guy committed suicide because of that game. And there are some learnings to be had there. And from our point of view, it would be we have to enforce it. We have to be extra strict, and we have to tell people about these things.
So will you enforce that even in states where the law doesn't require it?
Yes, just because in this case, we have a global brand to protect.
So it'll be true in the U.S. even if the U.S. doesn't?
Because if the last thing we need is sort of a news article that says, kid dies playing Hello Kitty.
Surely, the last thing you need is somebody to die while using your product, never mind what your reputation suffers.
And so, exactly. So there's many impacts there. I agree.
The subtle distinction here, right?
Yes.
The last thing we need is the bad press. All right, no. That's the second to the last thing we need. Right. Judy.
But to answer the question was whose responsibility is it? It's everybody's responsibility here, whether we're parents or just citizens in an online community, but particularly for teachers. And the problem is that teachers don't recognise it's their responsibility. They think the internet is another place where bad things happen they don't really want to get involved with, and they don't know what the proper responsible code of behaviour would be in the internet. And I think that teachers need our help in this, in educating them about what's appropriate so they can discuss it with the children.
Yes. Michael and Sochi, I think there was maybe a couple things you wanted to show from Bebo on the child protection angle, less protecting them from themselves, I guess, and more from the kind of, in that initial video, the guy at the fence that may be coming after them or something.
Do you have a slide?
Yeah, if you can put up the podium thing again. Here we go. There is the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, and I gather you guys are in a partnership with them, right? So here is one link you sent me. No, this is the wrong one. Here is one link you sent me to a page from somebody named Tanya. Hey guys, well, my name's Tanya, and Childline is great. I hated my life before, but thanks to them I'm better. I was being picked on at home, et cetera, and now things are better. Tell us about how Tanya came about.
Okay, so this is actually the second time we've worked with the NSPCC. We did so a year ago, and it was incredibly effective. We had 140,000 Bebo members engaging with the NSPCC brand, taking polls, and they wanted to repeat that a year later. And it's done a little bit differently this time, and we basically have fictional case studies. So it's based on very common and true
So Tanya's like
circumstances.
his friend in Pittsburgh, Allie, a composite.
Exactly, yeah. So representative of certain issues, and there's different profiles for different issues that children face.
So here's this disclaimer. So some adult wrote this thing.
That's fake copy, yeah?
Yeah, that's fake
I was
copy.
going to say the spelling's a little off.
Yeah.
You mean the misspellings are wrong? Yes, it should be misspelled differently.
A little bit like the panel here today is dressed very casually because we're pretending to be young.
Some of us have dealt with reality.
The copy here is obviously written by an adult who's also pretending still to be young.
Yes.
So intentional misspellings.
And so this person is online right now. Who is actually online right now?
The person managing that profile. So people at the NSPCC actually manage these profiles. They communicate with members, and they use it in a way for children can reach out to them. And obviously you can't conduct on a public profile too much communication. So what they're ultimately trying to do is actually get them to call Childline and interact with them on a private basis and actually help these children.
So for example, Little Miss Sunshine wrote 18 hours ago, that's what it was like for me. Can I talk to you sometime if I need to speak about it right back? Do we think Little Miss Sunshine is real or fake? It's somebody real who believes this is real, or somebody fake who believes this is fake?
This is a real member who's
This is a
trying to
real
reach
person
out.
who believes it's real.
No, they believe that the NSPCC is real, and they want to communicate with the NSPCC.
Does the user base know Tanya is fake?
Yes.
Well, it does say at the top, there's this huge disclaimer.
I didn't see that.
I mean, the one thing it's really hard to do is guarantee that anyone will read text and really understand. So she's reached out in a comment, and then the NSPCC will contact her privately and continue a dialogue.
It does seem like "you're brave, good on you" does sort of sound like, no, maybe they're speaking to the character. Judy, do you have a reaction to this?
I think this is a great project. I think it's really responsible of you people to do this. I've seen a similar project by a group of therapists in Ireland who were working with adolescents who had various mental health problems. And what they did, instead of creating fictional personas, was they talked to people with real life problems, but they created stories based on them, but not with video content, obviously. But they had voiceovers by the children with pictures and artwork which matched the message they were telling. And the good thing about that was that it was very powerful to hear the voice of the person who had that problem. It's very moving to have that, so it's maybe something you could think of next.
I mean, the NSPCC, they're trying to reach out to the mass audience of youth, and the youth spend a lot of time on Bebo, a significant amount of time. So we have 8.8 million registered members in the UK alone, and about 5% of all page views on the internet, according to Comscore, are actually on Bebo.com. So whereas a lot of people here are probably over 30, I imagine, and very few people using it, that a lot of their children and other people will actually be on it. So it's a fantastic way for them to reach out where people are spending their time.
Got it. I saw a question or a comment over here. I know we don't have much time. Oh, great, you're right at the mic. Go for it. Tell us who you are.
Andy Hart, Daily Mail Group. 2 quick questions. I read on the BBC site that in China there are 2 million internet addicts in hospital. Is that correct?
There are, I mean, as of, I think, 2 years ago, China actually accepted sort of the internet addiction as an actual internet addiction syndrome. And so they have clinics to deal with that. I actually don't know if it's 2 million, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Some of them may be spoofed accounts.
Someone said that you shut down their account, their assets. When I build a Bebo page or any page on any social network, who owns that asset? And I'm thinking about portability. If I get to a certain age and want to move on to another social network, like, can I take my stuff with me? Do I own it?
Anything you upload, whether it's your own music, your own photos, the copyright of that belongs to you, your videos. So you can take that and do whatever you like with it. We don't claim any rights to what you've uploaded. Or if you've written, we have an author's product, so we encourage young writers. In fact, we did a competition recently called Nanotales. We had 3,000 entrants, 100 finalists, and then in the spirit of Bebo, we let the community pick the final 25, and they're going to become published authors, and they're benefiting from this. It's still their copyright.
Although I suppose, as with Nanotales, which I have up on the podium here, you have a non-exclusive, worldwide, paid-up, perpetual license, so that if you ever want to do the best of Bebo, hey, they uploaded it, they've given it to you, they can also take it, but you're allowed to do as you wish with it.
I mean, I don't know I don't know the exact details of the Nanotales competition. I'm sure there's competition rules, so you could find out about that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. On that topic, for online games, the feeling is quite different, because the assets that you create are generally, there's some games like Second Life or There.com, where we treat it as what I build is yours, but most of the online games all say that the assets I develop inside the game, which are usually created by the game company anyway, belong to the company. So, however, quasi-illegal sort of item trading is a huge business. It's a couple $100 million at least. And so, companies like Itembase specialize just in trading these virtual items, but from game companies that actually don't really technically allow it. So it's a black market trade. And there have been cases, and we've been involved in some of these cases, where people, we would block the accounts because what happens is it creates an imbalance. Basically gold farmers are creating virtual gold, virtual items, and then they would sell them to other people, which would upset the game balance because people would be wealthier or people would have more other things. And so we have the right to stop them. And then we get huge amounts of complaints because they're saying, well, they're mine. Although technically they're not, because the question here, I guess, is because I invested the time, 30 hours of hard work to create this asset, why should I not be allowed to sell it, right? As opposed to creating music and uploading it to a website, that's different because it was his content. But what if he creates something virtually from an asset that was already virtually there, like a game that he achieved to get it over many days of work? Should he not be able to sell that? And of course, that's the debate.
So this raises another great question, which is, to the extent that we see an intermingling of tried and true brands, corporate properties for which, certainly prior to the year 2000, the name of the game was to control your brand and to manage it and to make sure it doesn't get tarnished in any way. We see that intermingling with kids for whom we were told earlier in the conference that user-generated content is not even zeitgeist anymore. It's just mainstream. It's like part of the whole deal. How do you reconcile the need to be able to control one's brand and how it's portrayed with the idea that you want to let it go and let the kids play with it and see what they come up with? I don't know if anybody has... Judy.
Can I just stand up for the kids before we go on with this? Because
Please.
I think that we've been rather unfair in characterising them, particularly by saying that they're very materialistic. That's one thing. And also that they get bored easily, because in the work that I do in schools, kids can concentrate very intensely for long periods if they have a task that's interesting enough. So if we see them flipping and multitasking between things and casual gaming, it's because we're giving them activities that encourage that sort of behaviour. And the thing about being materialistic is because we're selling them lots of stuff. But I've seen kids, when they're making games, really starting to explore their identities and explore spiritual values and what it means to be growing up, and thinking about things more deeply, I suspect, than some of the marketing type spin we've seen here today.
And how much in the mainstream sites that kids use, the brands that we do know about, do you see a balance, in your view, struck well on eliciting from kids the kind of behavior that you think is constructive and helpful?
I think that it's relatively rare, and kids do need help from adults in doing that. As experienced humans, having lived for a bit, they need our guidance in this. And again, I think that's where education helps.
We were talking about the difference in some sites as to whether or not it very quickly up front tells you in a social networking site how many friends you have, because that can very quickly become the metric of your success. The greater that number, the better off you are. And I see Bebo doesn't tell you how many friends you have. It doesn't advertise it.
That's correct. We don't think that if you advertise a number on a profile, it becomes almost a competition to increase that number.
Yes.
So
yes.
we don't disclose, although you can work it out by going to see how many pages of friends there are. We don't put it up on the profile. And I mean, the well-known case of MySpace, friend collecting is the big thing. Like, how many friends have you got? I think the maximum may be well over 1 million. And obviously, no one really has 1 million friends. And the experience of Bebo is about connecting with your friends. And a lot of the products are designed about feeding you information. So if your friend uploads a photo, you see photos from your friends. And when they're not real friends, it starts breaking down and becoming far less of a utility. So we actively discourage friend collecting.
Yeah.
So on your point, I agree but also disagree. I agree that there's responsibility, right? But I am not, again, I'm not so sure that adults really know what's best for the kids. Yeah. And coming from, an environment such as China or other communist countries where censorship is widely practiced, although much better than before, there is a very fine line where you draw between what you give them and what you don't. And what I can see, in the name of education, you can do a lot of things. Yeah. And you can block a lot of things. Yeah. So, unfortunately, I don't think the world has many people like you in that respect. So from my vantage point, the more freedom of information there is, I think, the easier it would be, because eventually there will be people who can help as opposed to trying to stop it. I mean, it's a tough, I understand the balance issue, but you can take it the complete other way once you start somewhere.
Josh?
I want to jump into sort of the question that you were asking a little bit, because I have some thoughts about it. My group always thinks about human beings online and people having real lives on the internet, what their digital lives are like. And when we think about marketing or advertising a brand online, we always imagine, well, what would it be like if they had an online life, if a brand had an online life? And it's really sad and almost sort of distressing to think that most brands are sort of the rambunctious person at the party that's yelling and screaming, and they really don't have quite a good online life at all. They're bad online citizens most of the time. So we think about like integrating our marketing brands online. You have to imagine like what would it be like if they practiced some of the things that we talked about up here, as their online life.
Give us an example.
An example would be, rather than spending, marketing money on banner advertising, what would it be like if that marketing money went towards creating a blog or a website or a resource or something that people would use and interact with?
Well, here's maybe the best way to focus that question, and a nice one to kind of wrap it up, because I've been intrigued at the amount of what we've seen today has been almost the politicization of commerce and of marketing. And not by politicization, I don't mean bringing of ideology to it, political ideologies. I mean people are asked to vote with their skin. They show their loyalty to a brand, not just by what T-shirt they wear, but by deciding to change their status message in a way that represents it, and are given often the tools by that brand to do so. So if I'm actually a politician, I'm a political candidate, I don't know if I'm running in the UK or in the US or somewhere in Asia, how careful do I need to be? And on the other hand, how much opportunity is there? Should I start my blog, but I got to make it real and say, God, I had a terrible speech today, and I couldn't stand the people in the audience, and blah. Or is it just another great and successful day? Tune into tomorrow's blog.
I mean, there's obviously a certain amount of spin that has to happen on anything you do as a politician or a brand or anything, but there's a level of authenticity and transparency and honesty that the digital youth expects to receive that I don't think they are.
Was Barack Obama right to seize his MySpace page from a fan who had registered lots of friends but basically controlled the page?
I didn't know he seized it, but
presume I'm right.
No. But he's made a lot of other right moves. Like he's on Twitter and he's twittering. He's actually talking about what he's doing, and he's sort of engaging as if he was a real human being.
Yeah.
Where Coca-Cola will go on Twitter and they'll say, buy Coke, or or they'll find some other. They'll make a fake persona to go on Twitter, and then 100 Twitters in, that'll say, "Going to have a Coke now." And like there are a lot of more.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, and there are a lot of more. They're stickier and more ingenious ways to do that will have a longer lasting life than just 100 Twitters and then going to have a Coke now.
Yeah.
I think brands realize now it's a long-term relationship, and that's what they're trying to build.
Yeah. Well, some words that echo back to me from yesterday are whoever here on the stage said it's not return on investment anymore, it's return on involvement. And I get a sense from each of you about the extent to which you kind of live and breathe the stuff that you study and that you do. It's not just you might have been in the cinder block business if only that had opened up as an opportunity. And ditto too when you're talking about the kids, Judy, and what you're working on, and just that kind of excitement, I guess, is a form of authenticity. And I also think back to Linden Labs yesterday with, collaborative creativity, and the idea of being able to sit around the table and have some good thoughts and send it out half finished to the world and let them see if they can take it the rest of the way. And just the hope is we don't find our kids too badly burned in the meantime. I didn't really hear, because I don't know that any of us has come up with one, a really satisfying answer to the bullying problem. And I think there's obviously some dimensions that for some of these kids, the bullying can be far worse when it's done on such a global scale and stage. And we're going to have to keep working on that and thinking about it. And in 5 years when we gather again, we're going to have to be told what the digital natives and youth are all up to today. If you can all join me in thanking our panelists. They're terrific. Thank you so much.